the Arabs to fight against the Turks, who were of course allied with the Germans. And of course the Arabs did this under the pretext of Arab nationalism, an Arab state. But of course in 1916, the French and the British signed the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which secretly divided the Middle East into Iraq, which incidentally didn't exist as a country. I'm sure most of us probably know that. It was 3 Ottoman provinces, was never one united country. And the British created it because they wanted a direct connection from the jewel of their empire, India, to the Mediterranean. And the only piece of land that they didn't have connecting it, because they had Afghanistan and Iran, and the French had Syria. I mean, the only piece that they didn't have consolidated was Iraq, what's today Iraq, so they created it. Nonetheless, and the Europeans attempted to continue their exploitation of the region by dividing it, by exploiting the divisions that exist within the Middle East. Arab nationalism, however, the dream of Arab unity has never died, though. We have to keep this in mind. And the Syrian and the Iraqi government, for example, are political enemies, or were when Saddam Hussein was in power. The people were never political enemies, because their cultural ties go so deep. You can't separate the Iraqis from the Syrians the same way you can the Germans from the French. You can't do that, because they're very, very close. They've married across borders. There are caravan trails that are centuries old, from Damascus to Baghdad, and all the ethnic mixing, the cultural appreciation of one another's small histories, it's all been spread from one people to another. We have to understand that the Syrians can help negotiate peace because they can talk to the Iraqis as their brothers, because they are. And Saddam's dream for the Ba'ath Party, which had been perverted, and everybody saw that, once it was gone, revitalized some youth in the region to rethink about what it means to have an Arab national identity that doesn't include Western intervention. And the most powerful part of this story is that in the Middle East, my generation is called, in the Middle East, in the streets of the Middle East, the generation of the satellite. Because now there's internet and satellite TV, and no longer can regimes keep images of the outside world away from these people. And if nothing else, they are thirsty for new ideas that include human rights, that include freedom, that include a legal system that we can at least work with. All of these factors play into the issues of negotiations within Iraq. Because Iraq, the educated class of Iraq, has left, but they haven't gone that far, many of them. They're right next door, and they have been talking to people. Not only can the Syrians talk to the Iraqis as Syrians, they have Iraqis who are staying in Syria right now that they can bring into the fold. On the other side, we could talk about Iran. Iran and Iraq have a pretty rough history, that's true. But there are, after all, there is that Shia connection in which Iran can work with. The two of the holy sites, Karbala and Najaf, were in Iraq, and two of the holy sites in Shia Islam. You can't separate the Iraqis from the Iranians because the religious connection, just like the Arabic one, runs rather deep. And the Iranians don't want two of their holiest sites enveloped in chaos and civil war. And just like the people of Syria and Iraq, and Palestine and Lebanon, in Iran, they have the internet too. In Iran, they have satellite television too. And people can communicate with one another. I'm sorry that wasn't probably the technical answer that people were looking for. It was probably a little long-winded, but try that for now.
So we're going to actually take these in a row, just for the sake of time, and so you don't have to stand too long. We'll take these questions in a row, and if folks could really try to limit yourself to a minute, and then Paul will respond to all of them. And I just want to say that right afterward, when we end, we're going to try to get done by 5:15, even though the program says 5:30. Paul's going to do a couple interviews, but if there are any soldiers or vets in the crowd today, Paul would love to talk with you afterward. So please come up as soon as he's done with the interviews. He'd love to talk, and I know there's a couple other folks that Paul's talking to in the military today. So, and also military families, if there are any military families who'd like to talk to Paul afterward, military families are a really important part of this movement as well.
I understand you don't speak for the current administration, but I'm anxious to hear your ideas on the original plans, the ideas. Why the original invasion? Why are we there?
Thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. I have 1,000 questions. I'm going to tell you just a short, very short story, under a minute, with a question. I was in New York last weekend, the day before President's Day, and I was approached by a man on the street who was wearing a sweatshirt with the American flag and a clipboard. And he looked at me and said, "Are you a patriot?" And I said, "No." And he looked at me incredulously and said, "You're not a patriot?" And I said, "No, I'm an Anabaptist." And he said, "What's that?" And I said, "That means I'm against the war." And then he turned away, and I never found out what his clipboard was for, because I think he was so shocked that I wasn't a patriot. So my question is, can you be a patriot and be anti-war?
Hi, in the light of our elections and our debates and what's going on politically in this country, I'm just curious as to who you would endorse to get us out of this war that is so tragic in the political field, okay?
We're going to play hardball today.
Hi, thank you. I have a two-part question.
Okay.
First, please say you're writing a book.
Actually, I have actually written one, and I haven't gotten it published yet. It's a tough thing to do when you're not former Secretary of Defense.
And secondly, our media being as bizarre as it is, can you somehow bring your voice to it? I don't know, Stephen Colbert, Glenn Beck, Larry King. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you for being here today. Very educational, and I love the complicated parts of you. I love that stuff. But anyway, myself, just real quick, combined 20 years service, active duty, and National Guard here in PA. And I got to tell you the story about, especially when you get to the tank column, that was my MOS, broke my heart. But anyway, my question is, how do you feel, what's your opinion about partitioning Iraq into the, so much is Shia, has ties to Iran, and, the Kurds in the north, and I guess typically mostly Sunni in the central. I was just wondering your personal opinion.